I'm a model, you know what I mean, and I can do my little turn on the catwalk. On the catwalk, yeah, on the catwalk. I can shake my little skinny jeans on the catwalk. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're now floating in Screamacelica. My name's Kevin Graham, and tonight I'm joined by Russell, the model Boyce. Boyce, what is actually happening, sir?
What is actually happening, Kev? It's a great question. I have never spent a Tuesday morning posing for photos in my life, but it was a good experience. It was good to be out my comfort zone, mate, and making a plonker of myself, mate. It was good.
The photos I've seen anyway look quite decent, so I thought I would actually serenade you with right wing said Fred, because they seem to be like everywhere right said Fred now. They seem to be quite COVID deniers and quite right wing now. If you search for them on Twitter, maybe it's just because I follow a load of lefty lefty folk who just keep on retweeting what they're actually saying, but I'm too sexy for my shirt. There you go, you've got a cracking shirt on, a nice wee pretty green number as well the night, eh?
Absolutely, mate.
So I've been away for the last 2 weeks, so what have you been up to?
Oh, mate, it was a bit of a grudge stab to give you the DeLorean back, mate. I didn't want to park it outside your house. Honestly,
I noticed you went. I noticed you went right back to the 90s, though. I'll need to remember that, because you were only a young pup in the 90s. I wasn't even born. So we need to go back to the 90s. I've had an interesting 2 weeks. I was in Mallorca for 2 weeks, but the Love Island producers sent me home because they didn't want some talent actually just going in there and just slaying the villa, eh? So that's why I'm back here, eh? That's why I'm back here. Donny Boy 67 comes in. Right said Fred, come on guys, come on, it's in tribute to Russell's.
Yes, mate. It's
we're not that deeply dippy. It's a tribute to Russell. If you haven't seen the photos or the video that was put up on Twitter today, Russell modelling the new ACSOM Celtic kit. Well, ACSOM hoops, I'm not going to call it a Celtic kit, because that might annoy some people who think that we're trying to take over the club and be bigger than Magners or Daffa or whoever's on front of our kit now. So Russell was doing a bit of modelling for the website today, and you'll see and you'll see the fruits of that labour soon. I've seen some of the pictures, and some of them are cracking, man. Some of them are cracking. He's like a young Rod Stewart, and that's all I can say. Right, boys, the DeLoreans travelled to northwest London on the 26th of July 2009. And we've parked up outside Wembley Stadium as connected by EE to give it its full corporate suit name. Now, this was a tournament that was, the Wembley Cup was a tournament, it was sponsored by ING, Palm Hill Developments, Vodafone Egypt and Umbro, right? Basically, it was because Wembley had been refurbished 2 years before at the cost of £800 million. It cost to rebuild Wembley.
That's right.
And they replaced the famous Twin Towers with this big arch, which was a 440-foot arch, which was lit up on Sunday night in the colours of the Italian flag to the thankfulness of many, many millions of Italians and Scots and Welsh and Irish and anybody else that doesn't like English media all over the world. Do you know the Twin Towers in Old Wembley? So they always say the famous Twin Towers. They were hollow. They were like just big meringues. There was nothing in the middle. There was nothing in the middle of them, because when they were demolishing it, they wanted to take it. Some folks said, they should move them and make them sites of like historical interest, and they couldn't, because as soon as they moved them, they were just going to collapse because there was nothing in the middle of them.
Wow, that is interesting. Quite iconic, though.
That is definitely, aye.
the Twin Towers at Wembley always did remind me of like FA Cup finals when you were young. The one that comes to my mind would be when Di Matteo scored after like 30 seconds, an absolute belter for about 40 for about the halfway line, to be fair. It absolutely rattled off the underside of the bar. But I always used to like watching the FA Cup final growing up because, I don't know, it's just what you did, wasn't it? You watched these sort of games, and the Twin Towers are quite, I always felt they were quite iconic.
I recently watched an Everton documentary, Howard's Way, and they were talking about the 1984 FA Cup final. And Andy Gray says the coverage started at 7 o'clock in the morning, and it was a whole day. And it showed you the stuff from the Everton team hotel that morning. And you wouldn't get that sort of coverage. There was telecrews waking the guys up, chatting their hotel bedrooms, waking them up.
Wow.
And stuff like that. You wouldn't get that now. And I did have a sensible occasion. One of the Everton players, I can't remember who it is, says used to love the fact that you had the long walk because the tunnel was behind the goals. And used to have the long walk out. They says that was brilliant. He says that's what you wanted to be a football player for, that moment when you were walking out that Wembley tunnel. And now you've just got this sort of, I've never been in it, but it looks impressive. But all these modern stadiums look impressive, don't they?
No, they feel all a wee bit soulless though, Kev, as well. Eh? I think maybe the only one I think that's really captured like the sort of balance of being a modern stadium but keeping the stands kind of right on top of the pitch looks to be that new Spurs stadium. You know, originally named the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. And there's the imagination in that. But I like the fact they've kept that one quite steep and kind of on top of the pitch. But a lot of these new stadiums, my vibe anyway, it seems they do seem a wee bit plastic, none more so than that Emirates one, also in London. That just seems a wee bit, we're lucky to have Celtic Park, mate, you know what I mean?
We are lucky to have Celtic Park. I think Celtic Park's the only, maybe this is just me because I was lucky enough to spend 12, 13 years going to the old Celtic Park, then it was refurbished. Okay? And I think the modern Celtic Park's better than the old Celtic Park because I've discussed this many a times on this podcast. By the time you got to the late 80s, early 90s, the old Celtic Park was falling apart. It wasn't a horrible place to go, but it needed a lot of refurbishment. And I think the new Celtic Park is one of these new stadiums which basically has, for me, it's better going to the new Celtic Park than going to the old one. I think the atmosphere's far better at the new Celtic Park. Maybe just because I've been going to the new Celtic Park far longer now. I've experienced some great European nights there as well, and some great League One nights and stuff like that. But I think the new Celtic Park captures the spirit of the old Celtic because I wouldn't have liked us to move. I think if you move stadium, you lose something. And the fact that Celtic Park's built on the site of the second Celtic Park keeps that connection with your home ground or something like that.
No, I agree with you on that.
Your home area. Where you look at these clubs that have moved, I think they've struggled once they've moved. No matter, I think all Tottenham have just turned the ground round. It's still on the same site, but it's on a different. It's facing a different way.
That might be right.
And the reason it's called the Tottenham Stadium is because they wanted to sell the naming rights, and they haven't been able to do it yet. So that's the reason. That's the reason why it's got such a bland name. Now, Celtic were the first club to play at the new refurbished Wembley, and thousands of Celtic fans went down, and many of the Celtic fans took a lot of the guys on my supporters bus, went down on the overnight megabus, the £10
I've done that.
Have you done that? Well, if you've done that, you didn't need any COVID jabs because that bus is full of waif strays and untold nightmares.
Mate.
That's the one that leaves Buchanan Street at, was it quarter to 12 at night?
Yep, that's the exact one, mate. And me and my brother went, he'll not like me for saying this, but we did a good few drinks on the bus, right? And then we both I definitely passed it. and I've woke up looking at my left, and you know that startled face your mate gives you when you know something, but he's like, I'm like, what is it? I went, no. And then before you know it, there was, he waited, didn't he? So that we were the most unpopular people on the bus by a mile. A hot, stuffy bus, reeking of Jaeger bomb influenced spew. So that's my memories of the megabus. We'll move on quickly for that, Kev.
Oh, definitely. So we're playing the inaugural Wembley Cup tournament, a tournament that hasn't been played since for professional teams.
Yep.
And so the original four were us, Barcelona, Spurs, and the most successful club side in the world, Al Ahly from Egypt. Now, I like it when clubs proclaim to be the most successful club side in the world. But similarly, this mob can actually say they are, because they've got the most ever domestic trophies, and African trophies as well. So when you add up all the trophies, they are the most successful club side in the world.
Yeah.
But it's amazing the amount of clubs that actually claim that, eh?
I can't think of any.
These wee clubs that just claim, it's all about like how many titles have Celtic won? Do you know how many titles Celtic have won?
I've never seen us waving it about in a banner.
No.
I've never said we were going for I think it's 53.
See, it's one thing I've never been. We've won more Scottish Cups than you. We've won more like this and that. I couldn't give a monkeys. It's how you won them is for me how you do it. I didn't count them because your next.
I think maybe the sequencing. Would you say that though, Kev? You would still like to do like the 10 and obviously I think stuff like that's always.
Aye,
bit different. But the total amount, no.
The total amount, no. But what's the point? Your next one's always going to be your best one. The next one's the one that you're looking forward to. Eh? So I didn't count. It's like counting your money. Eh? It's like having cars outside and just counting your cars. Eh? So I think clubs. I think it's like wee man syndrome. Small penis syndrome, I'll call it. If you have to shout about how many things that you've won, you have got a small penis, I reckon. Right. You're just a small club, I reckon. If that's the way that you measure your success. So the most successful club side in the world, Al Ahly, and basically, like a lot of these pre-season tournaments, it's a complicated affair. Like the way that these are set up. So there's 4 teams. Each team plays 2 games, and it's 3 points for a win, 1 point for a draw, and you get a point per goal. So it's utterly bizarre, like a lot of these pre-season tournaments actually are. Now, when we got invited to this prestigious tournament, Peter Wall says, our trips down south have been nothing but positive for the club. This was before 3 years later we went to Brentford and had pitch invasions and set off flares and stuff like that. The way we have acted as the club have behaved, they are great ambassadors. So that was the reason that he says we got invited to the Wembley Cup. Now, this was the tail end of one of these around the world in 80 days pre-seasons that we seem to go on. So on the 12th of July, we had been in Australia to play Queensland Roar. On the 22nd of July, we had went to Cardiff to open Cardiff's new ground, and we did open Cardiff's new ground, and we had a boring nothing draw to open Cardiff Stadium.
Lovely.
And on the same press release, Peter Wall actually says that we did hope to take part in the Peace Cup in Spain, which would feature Real Madrid, Aston Villa, Seville and Malaga, but that was only if we had won the league. But we didn't win the league, so we couldn't go and play in the Peace Cup in Spain. Russell, what do you remember of the heady days when we used to get invited to glamour friendlies, and now we just find ourselves like dobbing about Wales and Bristol?
Well, the Champions League qualifiers get that soon, that, you can't really afford, even though we don't really seem to be taking them particularly seriously these days, but that's for another story. But I remember you used to go to America a lot as well. Under Martin O'Neill, under Lenny. I mean, I just don't. For me, I get the glamour bit of it, and you're trying to build, a brand, and you want to be associated with these big clubs if you can't be doing it in the Champions League or whatever on a regular basis. But I just feel that, when a players came back from effectively their holidays, as short as they are now getting, the last thing they need to be doing is jetting about the world. You know what I mean? For basically corporate purposes, Kev. Not for the actual players' fitness purposes, because, well, I've been to Vegas, for example, and jet lag is a real thing. You know what I mean? Not so much when I was there, but when I got back, I was definitely suffering from it. And you think, if you've just had, your few weeks break from being maybe an elite athlete day in, day out, and you've went maybe on holiday abroad, had a few beers, relaxed, unwound, you're trying to get back to your optimum fitness level that you finished the season on. How could you be benefited by travelling to Australia like you've just quoted there, or going to Florida, things like that, on top of doing a pre-season training? For me, it makes a heck of a lot more sense, the likes of going down to, is it Cardiff we've went this summer?
Wales, Newport.
Wales. Well,
Newport.
Wales, as you just said, Cardiff, that's what's in my head. Then down to Wales, you're still getting beautiful weather, but it's nowhere near as far a travel, do you know what I mean? And you're getting games under your belt, do you know what I mean? So I'm just not convinced that there was really anything that was benefiting the players as much. I appreciate they're playing against high opposition and things like that, but really, is it an remote accurate test? I know pre-season friendlies get sort of looked at as not being much of a test anyway, but I mean, really, if you've just flown for 13, 14, even more, 20 hours, are you really gauging that against some of the best teams in the world or whatever? If you were doing one of those tournaments in America, are you really going to get anything from that? Are you learning anything? I don't really think so, to be honest with you. I think you're hindering their pre-season warm-up.
It's basically, when you look at the English clubs doing it, it's just brand promotion.
That's
and it's just for money. And it's just for these, what could you say, expand your fan base, going to the Far East and places like that. And when you already have to look at it with Ange Postecoglou and at Celtic, there's been a spike in interest in Australia of what's going to happen in Celtic. I will just go try to find that comment again. So somebody actually says, I can't find the comment, but somebody actually says he wouldn't be surprised if we go to Australia next year. If we try and do something in Australia next year, which is fine, because there is a lot of the diaspora are out there, and it was the same when we used to go to, especially East Coast to America, the games in Philadelphia, New York, Boston, places like that. There's a lot of the diaspora are out there, and they loved seeing Celtic. But these things just become, you have to think of the players at times. Mm-hmm. It's all right if you've got plenty of time and you can come back and it's well planned, but these things were like going to Australia for one game, then flying back, playing a couple of friendlies here, then going to Cardiff. You just seem to be bouncing about the place. It was like the game, an end of season game in Japan as well. Know what I mean? It's these tours have to be done right. These tournaments have to be done right to have any benefit. And we can actually say this one was done right because we won the bloody thing. We've actually got the Wembley Cup sitting in the trophy room, and we've never had to give it back yet. And it was the start of the Tony Mowbray era. And Ryan comes in, where is it? Ryan Kelly comes in, comment on YouTube. Finally, a Screamacelica episode highlighting a Celtic game I can remember. Cheers, Ryan. Cheers, Ryan. Sean Curran comes in, and this is some things. We're the first ever Scottish club to play at the refurbished Wembley. Sean Curran comes in via YouTube as well. First club to play at Fenway Park as well. So there you go. Like we've got stuff like that. Like,
see, our viewers are knowledgeable chaps, Kev. Do you know what I mean?
Definitely.
We are dealing with a knowledgeable audience. That is the thing, mate.
Maybe not in football, but on some things they seem very knowledgeable about. If you look at the comments that come in at times, which sometimes completely distract me, going, "What are they actually talking about in the comments?" Because, wait until I'll be able to bring the comments up. It's going to be far better. It's going to be far better for everybody.
We will get there.
So we go into this game. It's on a Sunday afternoon. On the Friday night, we had beaten El Hali, the world's most successful football club, 5-0. With goals from Donati, Scott McDonald got 2, Sean Maloney and Chris Cullen. Barcelona and Spurs had drew 1 each. So when Barca beat El Hali, the world's most successful football club, 4-1 on the Sunday before this game, all we needed was a draw to win the tournament. Yep. So we turned up to play Spurs, and basically what Tony Mowbray did was Tony Mowbray changed the side for the Friday night because we were 3 days away from a Champions League qualifier against Dynamo Moscow. So the Celtic team lined up at Wembley that day was Lucas Zaluska, Glenn Louvens, Darren O'Dea, Paul Caddis, Danny Fox, Koki Mizuno, Paddy McCourt, Mark Crosas, Willow Flood, Chris Cullen and Giorgio Samaras. So right away, as you can tell that I'm laughing, what do you think of that side when you hear it said out loud?
Well, it's nice to be able to talk about different players we haven't spoken about already, Kev. I can say that much. Let's be honest, it's a side that would give you the fear, really, when you think about it, as if that was your start lineup looking back. I mean, I think it's a weak team, to be honest with you. I appreciate the fact there was a lot of first-team regulars obviously getting rested because it is a pre-season match. There's a few blasts for the past as well. The name that really sticks out to me is the same name as the clothing brand, Koki Mizuno. I forgot all about Koki Mizuno.
Old Koki.
Aye, I mean, that one is a blast from the past. And of course, McGinn as well. Niall McGinn's a player that, see, to be honest with you, I think went on and had a decent career. We Aberdeen won a lot of caps at Northern Ireland, featured at the Euros, of course, as well in 2016. You know, he's had a really decent career, but bizarrely played in South Korea at one point before returning to Aberdeen swiftly. But I mean, you forget you have guys like that in your books. Mark Crosas is very much in the Donati mould that he became the biggest Celtic fan in the world since he's left, eh?
The Bishop. Is that no his name on Twitter? The Bishop.
Is it?
Aye. I like Crosas. I thought Crosas was a tidy enough player. So did certain Glasgow DJs like him as well. Or he liked them. I'm not 100% sure how that worked out. We've got a comment coming in here, Russell. A Facebook user now, I don't know what happens here, but you've just came up as Facebook user, and it says, I walked the team out against Al Hali. So we've got a guy on the comments, or maybe a girl on the comments, saying that they were the mascot for the Celtic team on the Friday night at the Wembley Cup against the most successful club team in the world. So
nice, well done.
If you've got a YouTube user account, whoever you are, please comment on YouTube so we can give you your name, because I can't read your name. What was the other one that I saw? This must be the same person, a Facebook user. I was 13 and bigger than Maloney, but I got us free tickets for the Royal Box for both games that day.
That's brilliant. What a story that is, though. Imagine being, the
bigger than Sean Maloney.
Aye, well, I can imagine that.
Brian Watt comes in, and Brian does actually say this. Brian, this is the game when all the pigeons just sat on the pitch when Samaras scored his goal in this game. All the Facebook users come back, and Martin Kilcoyne. That's the name of the mascot. Martin, nice. Welcome to a Celtic State of Mind, and thanks for sharing your story that you sat in the Royal Box, probably next to some inbred royalty, and you were bigger than Sean Maloney at 13. That's fantastic. I love that. Brian Watt, do you remember the goal Koki Mizuno scored against Falkirk at the new Falkirk Stadium?
That rings a bell, yeah.
I remember that as well. That was a cracking goal as well.
He was one of those players that I think that showed flashes, Kev, that he could have, that he obviously had a lot of ability, Koki Mizuno, but I don't know, he was like one of those folk, he never really was convincing us someone that was going to get a regular run in the teams, you know what I mean, week in, week out. And I think to settle in when you come from the other side of the world, like we were just talking about that pre-season friendly, if you move to the other side of the world, the easiest way for him to settle into playing for Celtic, as a Celtic player, would have been to have got a run of games. I do think managers liked him because he did feature in a lot of match day squads.
I had a ticket for that day at Westfield, and I missed the game because my daughter was born the day before. So I missed Coco Mizuni's only goal for Celtic. I missed it. So there you go. I blame. I've never let my daughter forget that. I'll always bring that up. By the way, you made me miss Koki Mizuno's only Celtic goal. The Spurs team that we played that day was managed by Harry Redknapp. Did you see Harry Redknapp's appearance on EastEnders the other week there?
No.
Oh, it was ridiculously bad. Even worse than the Peter Crouch show, if anybody was unfortunate enough to actually see the Peter Crouch show during the Euros. So, a couple of names that jump out to us in that Spurs team. The most overrated right back ever to come out of Scotland, Alan Hutton, Cabbage Heat himself. I can't believe Spurs paid £9 million for the guy with knees like a cabbage.
Yeah, I remember him well. I remember him. He did all right at Rangers, in fairness, and then I think he did get a bad injury at Spurs, and he was doing pretty well, didn't he?
I think he broke his leg, yeah.
But I mean, he's one of those folk. He went to Aston Villa, played more games this season for Scotland than he did Villa. Madness.
That is madness, eh? That is madness. He
played more games for Scotland than he did for Aston Villa. So, wow.
Brian Watt comes in with another good point. Would that Koki Mizuno, I'm going to call him Coco all night now, Koki Mizuno, would that have been around the time Falkirk had Kasper Schmeichel on loan? I think it could have been, or it could have been another goalkeeper who was also at this Euros.
Tim Krul
was that's some claim to fame for Falkirk, eh? Having two goalkeepers at the current Euros, man. Eh? That's a great team, great claim to fame. Who else in this team? Jamie O'Hara. I think just because he does the stuff on Sky now that he was always there. Wilson Palacios. I just used to like Wilson Palacios because he's named.
I forgot all about him.
Aye, he has a great shot in this game that Zaluska has to save, and Robbie Keane, who joined Celtic 6 months later.
Yeah, of course. And the big sub that obviously stands out for me is Modric.
Yes.
Obviously, pretty relevant right now in Scottish states of mind. But I think Modric is, what a footballer still. You think how we're going back in time in the DeLorean here 12 years, and you look at Modric still tearing it up at the Euros just now. Do you know what I mean? Just an absolute gem of a footballer.
Jake Livermore is a sub for Tottenham. Is he still at Spurs?
No, he went to Hull City.
Did he go to Hull?
I think he's actually still there. Or he might have moved to West Brom. Someone can correct me on that. I've probably just made up two clubs, but I think I'm close.
Defoe's a sub for Tottenham as well. And so's Roman Pavlyuchenko. I used to like Rob. He was always linked with Celtic as well, eh?
He was. He played against us as well for Spartak.
I
was at that.
There's one thing you notice about this game before it kicks off. There's meant to be 64,562 there that day.
Yep.
And it looks empty.
Yeah,
it looks absolutely empty. It looks like the majority of the Celtic fans have stayed in the pub. And there was only meant to be 60,000 at Wembley on Sunday night there, and there was a lot more than 60,000 at Wembley on Sunday night there. Eh? So the game starts, and we score an early goal, and it's a great run down the right hand side by Paul Caddis. and Paul Caddis whips in a great ball for Chris Cullen, who scores with a header. What did you think about this goal?
I thought it was very typical Chris Cullen. I think he was one of those players that seemed to go in patches as well. Even when it was Hibs that we signed him from, I remember him having like wee goal flurries, like one of those people maybe score 5 games on the bounce, do you know what I mean? And look like he's actually a bit of a deadly finisher. He'd certainly had a spell at Celtic. I'm not sure if it was under Strachan or under Mowbray, where he was coming off the bench and making an impact quite often. To me, though, he was always going to be a striker that was a third or fourth sort of choice. Kev, he was never someone you've seen being, in your first choice striker, or usually played a partnership back then. So you wouldn't ever have associated them as being in your top 2 in the starting 11. But Cullen was one of those folk capable of going on wee runs where his name seemed to appear in the score sheet, quite regularly. The header was a completely typical Chris Cullen sort of goal, I would say.
It was a goal that brought him to Gordon Strachan's attention, because what we've got to remember is Gordon Strachan's scouting was at Easter Road, because that's where he used to go watch his football when he was Celtic manager. And he scored. I think he scored against us and scored 2 goals against Rangers. And next thing you know, we signed him in 2007 in a free transfer.
Mm-hmm.
But do you know where he started his career in Britain?
Man City?
Manchester City. He signed for Manchester City as a 17-year-old, did Chris Cullen. So there we go. We've got another Man City link.
I love it when I get them right.
I know. You're a very intelligent guy. And as these pictures will prove, a very good-looking guy also. Very camera friendly.
Aye.
From Man City, moved to Oldham for £250,000, and he went to Hibs, and obviously we signed him on the Hibs from a free transfer when he looked like he was actually going to a team that we played 2 weeks previously, which was Cardiff City. After that, Spurs take a grip of the game, basically. And Zaluska keeps us in the game with having 2 great saves for Darren Bent. Darren Bent's another striker that we always seem to be linked with as well, round about those days. One of those guys whose career didn't quite make it, eh?
No, it was a weird one because he cost 24 million for Villa in a January window. And there's always a Celtic link. Martin O'Neill had left Villa the day before the opening day of that season because he wasn't backed in the transfer market, because Villa felt he'd spent quite a lot already. But he'd got 3 sixth-place finishes in a row. And then come the January, they've got Goulier in charge and they're panicking because they're in the lower ebbs of the league, and they blow 24 million on Darren Bent, which I always found astounding. Do you know what I mean? Because you're like, surely if you're willing to do that when you're up against it, why not do it when you're ahead with O'Neill, who's getting you 6th place finishes and wants to go in the Champions League? Quickly on Darren Bent, one of those players that irritates me a wee bit, Kev, because there's this, and I think sometimes, in fairness, it's subconscious arrogance, Kev, right? But one of those folk that gets to their sort of 33, 34 and is like, oh, I would love a crack at Celtic or Rangers. Do you mean you love a crack at Celtic, mate? You know what I mean? You don't just come up here with 3 England caps, you know what I mean, at 34 years old and waltz into our team.
I know.
Probably 40 grand a week. I'm a free agent, I'm still undecided. I'm open to offers though, either side of the border, alluding to. I'm like, this is Celtic, it's not.
Come in and top up my pension, please.
That's it's a wee bit like as well though, to me, the pennies maybe dropped a wee bit too late. They realise, maybe it would have been nice to, compete for trophies. Maybe they are quite a big club, You never thought that, though, in your 20s. You would rather have sat on the bench at clubs coining your wage. So don't think of us as some afterthought in the twilight of your career. And I feel a lot of players from side to the border have adopted that attitude. So I just wanted to get that off my chest, Kev,
Aye, definitely, and I'm quite glad that you did, because I can see that you're feeling better and glowing about getting that off your chest. Darren Bent played for Ipswich, yeah? He did play.
Ipswich, he started.
He played for Ipswich Town.
Charlton, Sunderland, Villa.
Tony Mowbray's last game as a footballer was for Ipswich Town at Wembley, and he scored a goal in the playoff final. So there you go. There's another Ipswich Town, like Martin Kilcoyne comes back in, and he's telling us more about the story when he led at the Celtic team at the Wembley Cup. It was me that walked the team out. Boric was shouting, "Let's get into them" from the start as we were in the tunnel. He was so vocal, even for a friendly. I got my one pass of the ball on the pitch too. So I think he went on and maybe kicked the game off. He comes back in and he goes, "They made me go stand next to Maloney for a bam up." That's why I mentioned that part.
That's brilliant.
That's great, eh? I can just imagine that. All the players got a wee medal from Al Halley. I'll need to try and dig mine out, as I got one too. That would be brilliant, Martin. If you can actually show us a picture of that medal, that would be absolutely
I think that
magic.
What was the viewer's name?
Martin Kilcoyne. Aye.
I think that technically makes Martin our most successful viewer in the world.
Aye. A medal from the most successful club in the world.
Yeah.
A medal from the most successful club side in the world, and never forget that. So that's brilliant. Now, thanks, Martin. That's really made this bizarre. That's just made this bizarre game even more bizarre, but brilliant. I love stories like that. That's a great story like that. So nothing basically happens. Palacios has a long range shot as well, right? That Zaluska saves. And the game then goes into a sort of pre-season hangway. But then on 40 minutes, we get a Samaras solo special. He picks the ball up about the 5-10 yards inside the Celtic half, Russell, eh?
Yeah.
He brings it down. I think it's for a by kick. He brings it down. He turns, and he's got the whole of Wembley in front of him, and he just starts running. And a touch takes him a bit wide, and he bursts into the box, and he scores. It looks like he's knocked it too wide, and he was at an angle for about 14, 15 yards, and he absolutely batters it into the bottom corner pass. Who was the goal? Gomez. Gomez was in goals for Tottenham. It's a Samaras special, eh? On YouTube, there is Arabic commentary in the highlights of the game. And all you hear is them going absolutely mental and shouting stupendous and splendid, and it's a great bit of commentary.
And then, if I'm not mistaken, the name I wanted to. Do you not remember the name that's then mentioned by the commentators, which I'm guessing was in comparison? They say Ronaldo.
They do say Ronaldo.
Which made us chuckle today in the studio. But I was going to say, see when Samaras gets the ball, he's like a racehorse. See once he knocks the ball that 5 yards from me, he could shift. Like, I know we did a big feature on him the other week, so I don't want to repeat myself, but the pace he's going at there. My other observation, Kev, was the goal looks huge.
It does. It's
I don't know why. They pulled the net so far back that I agree with you. It looks like he's took it wide, but then when he hits it, you're like, keeper looks tiny with those nets behind him. He's got no chance.
No, the nets look absolutely massive. If you say they've tightened them right back, and it's a fair strike. Just having a look in the. Daniel Duffy mentions the pigeons as well. There was pigeons on the pitch, and the pigeons actually got closer to Samaras and the two Spurs defenders that were actually trying to chase him. It's as you say, it's a typical Samaras goal. It's a goal, a reason why we love big Samaras, and it's again we've done a whole episode on it, but. The Greek Ronaldo. the Greek
something
Ronaldo.
Like that was said, definitely. So he'd obviously made quite the impression to our foreign commentators on that instance, so fair enough.
Aye, definitely. Killen misses a chance just before half-time, which is again set up for it was set up by Samaras by winning the ball and running into Spurs defence and sticking it through. And basically, that was it. Nothing happens in the second half whatsoever. Spurs basically changed their whole team, and Celtic start making changes as well during the game. So I'll go through the subs that we make. Gary Caldwell comes on for Glenn Ruvens. Danny Fox, who we're going to talk about, gets replaced by Ryan Conroy. Let's see. Paul McGowan comes on for Koki Mizuno. I tell you, I'm just going to keep on calling him Coco. And Paddy McCourt is replaced by Simon Ferry. which is now Simon Ferry's other career now. He's got a Wembley Cup winners' medal with Simon Ferry because he played in this game. Because he played in this game against Tottenham. Niall McGinn also came on for Samaras later on. But how bizarre is that? When you actually see that team, you had Paul Caddis in that team who was highly rated as well. He played against Barcelona under Strachan as well.
Had a very good career.
He did. Ryan Conroy, again, a few pre-seasons here and there, a few pre-season games here and there. Paul McGowan, he's had a decent career despite issues off the field, shall we say. I think he's still at Dundee. Simon Ferry, a knee injury basically. His knee basically gave way a couple of months after that because he leaves 2 weeks after this to go to Swindon on loan. Mm-hmm. So at this point, he's recovering from the knee injury because he was highly tipped to be the next big thing within the Celtic youth setup. He was the next breakthrough star, and he got a serious knee injury. What's funny about this is Ferry leaves to go to Swindon on loan. And in the January, now obviously we'll look at that January. And January basically became a car crash because Chris Cullen leaves in January, Willow Flood leaves in January, Danny Fox leaves in January after us just signing him. And one of the players that came in that January, obviously, like we spoke about Robbie Keane, and we will do an episode on Robbie Keane. We will definitely do an episode on Robbie Keane because he deserves to get spoke about for 40 odd minutes. But that January, who else did we sign?
Paul
Slane, who plays a massive...
At the same time as Robbie Keane as well. The same night.
On the same night we signed Robbie Keane, we signed Paul Slane. So basically, Tony Mowbray started open goal. Can we ask? Can we claim that? I found that bizarre when I didn't realise that Ferry and Slane's paths had probably crossed at Celtic. So they did cross at Celtic. So nothing happens in the second half. Final whistle goes 2-0. Darren O'Dea goes up and lifts the Wembley Cup. That's it. We're the Wembley Cup champions forevermore, because it'll never be held for professional clubs ever again. So when you go on the tour round about Celtic Park, the Wembley Cup is there, and it's ours forever. The first ever Scottish team to win in Wembley, to pick up silverware in Wembley as well. Daniel Duffy comes back in as well and says, don't forget Edson Brafford, who left Hampden on the day of the Ross County semi-final as he wasn't in the squad. Edson Brafford, I get what you mean now. Edson Brafford signed in January as well, aye. Yeah.
And Diamansi Kamara.
Diamansi Kamara was another one that signed in January as well. And Jus Hooiveld was
Hooiveld. He arrived in January as well.
He arrived in the January as well. And Ki Sung Young also arrived in that January. So there you go. Well, Danny Fox came to us as a highly rated left back. We signed him for £1.5 million for Coventry, where he credits Chris Coleman and Celtic fan Steve Keane for turning around his career. Steve Keane is a massive Celtic fan. He comes from Cumbernauld, and he played for Celtic between, would it be 84, 85 to 86, maybe? I'm not 100% sure, but he played for Celtic. So Coleman and Keane were the manager at Coventry at the time. Basically, Danny Fox came to us, and we were actually told he had a weapon of a left foot, is how it's been described in the papers at the time.
Never get a right foot described as that, do you?
No, you didn't. No, it's only a tag it can be put to a left foot. It's a weapon of a left foot. He was a dead ball expert and a set piece expert, a corner kick expert and a dead ball expert. When he left Celtic 6 months later, we had never converted for any of his corner kicks. He had never scored a free kick for us. He had something like 2 assists. But that's not to say that he wasn't impressive for a wee while until he got injured, because he was.
Yeah.
Because he was impressive. He was energetic, he was leggy, and he looked like he could play a bit. And I remember when he left in that January, we were all like, what do you mean he's left? And he went
bizarre, didn't it?
He went to Burnley, and we got 1.8 million for him when he went to Burnley. And it seemed utterly bizarre that a player that we invested so much money in, we were willing to let leave after 6 months. And there hasn't even seemed to have been a big fallout or anything like that. It just says that we were offered money and he moved.
Signed over the manager's head, would you say, Kev? Sold over the manager's head, I meant to say. The vibe I get is that was Peter Lawwell just going, that'll do, see you later, make a quick buck. There's no manager in the world that doesn't back themselves when a player's done well and you then back selling him 5 months, 6 months later. That doesn't happen.
I'm just trying
to me looks like a Peter Lawwell production.
I'm just trying to have a look to see who would be the other left back. Lee Naylor would have been in the squad at that point, So did he think Lee Naylor was good enough to actually take us over the line, and the 1.8 million could have went on the loan signings at that point? You could be right. It sounds like a Peter Wall production, actually.
No, and then a loan signing comes in to replace him, and by the end of the season, Lee Naylor's scoring a free kick against Rangers.
That's right. Edson Brafield comes in. He's the left back. It comes in.
But Edson Brafield,
Russell's. I don't know if he's disappeared for anybody else there, but he has for me. You still there, Russell?
Aye.
Right. That's fine.
I was just saying that Edson Brafield, though, ironically goes on to play in the World Cup final. Is it that same summer?
2010. When did the Dutch get there? No, was it 2014? Did he not come on?
Was it?
It might have been. I saw him playing for Lazio in the Rome derby in 2016. I saw him playing for Lazio. I went to see Francisco Totti and ended up watching Edson Brafield for 90 minutes. Paul comes in. Mowbray did not want to sell Fox or Donati, sold from under his nose. Right, Massimo Donati had a great pre-season. He broke back into that team, and he scored against Arsenal in the Emirates in qualifier that we ended up the Champions League qualifier, and I think he was sold the following day. I can't even remember where he went, but Donati. Did he go to Barry? There you go. I like you. John Douglas comes in and says, no, 2010. So that must have been...
South Africa World Cup. I'm sure Brafield played the World Cup final after we thought, he was a diddy for us, I'm telling you.
We've been making bad transfer decisions for years when you start doing this again, See, when you start looking through this, I mean, for every Van Dijk, we've had a Brafield, No, for every Van Dijk, we've had 5 Brafields by the looks of stuff. And it doesn't look like that's going to change this summer. the way things are going. But I'll talk about that in the bulletin tomorrow. After Danny Fox left, his debut for Burnley, he scores a free kick and he gets an assist, and he calls his debut for Burnley the best footballing day of his life. so again, that's karma coming back to bite us. After Burnley, he went to Southampton, Nottingham Forest and Wigan, and he's still playing. He's playing for South East Bengal in the Indian Premier League. And
wow.
He's only 35. So he's still playing football. So, Russell, what do you remember? What's your whole take on pre-season anyway? I mean, we're watching pre-season games just now, and I'm sure if a Celtic State of Mind was about when we were watching this Wembley Cup, we would have been raving about Chris Cullen getting a chance in next season. Donati, he should be getting kept into the team. Paul Caddis, he's one to watch and stuff like that. Does this just really mean that pre-season means hee-haw when you actually start looking at when you start looking back?
I think it's one of those things with pre-season that the games take on a lot more meaning as a supporter if there's new signings to see, because you want to get that first glimpse, because you want to start casting your opinion early. Do you know what I mean? Whether there was a Celtic State of Mind or not, it's what you did with your mates in the pub. If you're watching there, if they're around it, you're better. If you've been lucky enough to go to Wembley, you want to see a new signing playing and going, telling you, I've seen signing him. He'll be the best player for us next year. He'll play every week next year. You got excited about that first glimpse of a new signing. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that's for me what pre-season friendlies are all about as a supporter, is getting that first glimpse at who's going to be the additions to the team that you've watched the year before. So when you've not got that, they're a bit of a tough slog, I think.
I think they are a bit of a tough slog because they are, what you've got to remember, they are glorified training sessions. The one last week against Sheffield Wednesday, which is split into 3 30-minute bits, completely shows how it's been treated. The game against Charlton at the weekend, when 2 different teams basically play first half, second half, they are just to get games into legs. I mean, I'm old enough, and I'm sure some of our audience is absolutely old enough to remember that you didn't have a clue if Celtic were playing a pre-season game or no until the following day. You would get the paper and there would be a wee score down the bottom, a Celtic 11 bet Nairn City 15-2. And you wouldn't even know who was playing or stuff like that. And now it's just business. You look at Celtic, we're going to show you all these pre-season games. And it's just to generate content, and it's just, football has changed, but I think a lot of people have to remember about these pre-season games that they are just training sessions. But
you can't win them though, because if you win, everyone will say what you just said there, Kev. But if you lose, bad start. We need signings. You know what I mean? So it's a bit of a double-edged sword, the pre-season friendlies.
Well, you have a look at it. You're saying bad start. Here we are. We've just won the Wembley Cup, and we're going to have a horrendous season.
I know.
So pre-season means nothing, but you can take positives out of pre-season, and that's where we are with Ange at the moment, because it's a whole new brand and style of football, and Tony Mowbray promised us that as well. And I'm not going to reverse my opinion at the time. I remember coming out this game going, hey, I'm looking forward to this season. Mm-hmm. I'm all looking forward to this season. Then it all went tits up when push comes to shove. But where we are just now, tomorrow we're playing Bristol City. I'm sure we'll just we'll love it. We love going to watch Celtic. Every Celtic game's great, but we've got to remember what it is, and we will make massive, wild proclamations that there's still hope for Olivier Ncham. There's still Owen Moffat's going to be the next greatest things for sliced bread. Mikey Johnson's not going to make it. We can't answer the questions until 6, 7, even 12 months down the line. No, at the moment, this is just getting game time and legs. And the game that we're talking about there, game against Spurs, that was Danny Fox's debut. So when we tuned into this game, we all would have been interested.
Exactly.
And seeing what Danny Fox looked like. But we'd all be interested in seeing how Tony Mowbray's Celtic were going to play. And that's what pre-season games are. And it's just in I think it's only in the last decade. Well, no, I remember the first time I ever tuned into pre-season games was Martin O'Neill's time, when we went to America. And I think that's when Celtic got their first Satanta channel. I think that's the first time I can ever remember pre-season games ending up on the telly. Before that, you just went to them if you wanted to go to them.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense. Totally.
And now you've got all these big tournaments. It just shows you how much the world has changed since I was growing up watching football. Anything else you want to talk about that game, Russell?
No, I think we've covered it all at the Wembley Cup. You know, a momentous occasion for us, the supporters, I'm sure the players at the time.
And we've got somebody in the comment, and we've got Martin in the comments, who was the Celtic mascot, and has got a medal from Al Ahly, the world's most successful club side, for being the mascot for Celtic that day. That's fantastic. Amazing. Well, we'll move on to the music, and we'll see everybody disappearing at the comments as we move on to the music. When I was having a look at the album charts at this point, Michael Jackson had 5 albums in the top 40. Basically, he had passed away. Turned out he had overdosed on barbiturates a month before, and it just showed you the cultural impact that Michael Jackson had, even to that point where his albums started selling millions of copies after he had passed away.
I think to me, it's one of those moments, like, I don't know, you know, when you find out like something big's happened, like, you know, like, you know where you are. Do you know what I mean? Like, see where you you know where you are when you find out a bit of news, like a certain news story. You can remember where you were at the time. I can remember being, in fact, you'll know the pub, Cape in Stirling, at the time when the news of Michael Jackson's death came up, and it was like, no way. And it's just one of those things, because it was just such a huge name, personality in the world, and it featured in so many news stories, as well as so many, and we're about the music, Kev, you know, and a lot of amazing music videos over the years. And yeah, it's one of those ones that when you found out, I remember exactly where I was standing when I found out, and I think that tells you all you need to know. It was a big deal, you know what I mean?
I think as well with Jackson, for me, growing up during the 80s, Jackson was massive. Thriller, then you had the Bad album after that. But then by the time you get into the 90s and towards the end of his career, there's this sort of darkness appears, surrounds him, and it's still happening to this day. But you can't deny. Sometimes I think you've got to separate the music from the person. And you can't deny that he made a massive influence on a lot of the popular music that you hear now. And I don't think anybody would mind me saying that he was a seriously disturbed individual. And a lot of that is probably down to his upbringing and the fact that he never had a normal childhood and all the rest of the stuff. I mean, a lot of these, when you start reading into this stuff, especially these big mega stars, they all seem to be addicted to prescribed drugs. And what this case in Hollywood for me sort of highlighted was the Hollywood drug doctors who just seem to prescribe opiates to anybody who's a big enough name and's got enough money. And it seems to be a massive problem. Eminem as well. He's admitted that he was addicted to prescribed drugs as well. And
Heath Ledger.
Aye, there's a whole load of them, and these doctors are peddling in death, basically. With these, I mean, everybody thinks that illegal drugs are bad enough, but then when you've got a doctor prescribing you stuff that you cannot get off, That's not that. I'm not trying to justify Michael Jackson's behaviour whatsoever. But there's a whole seedy underworld of this glamorous Hollywood scene, which we don't see. And there is a lot of darkness goes on behind successful doors, and I think Jackson was just part of that.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean, man. I mean, I just remember growing up, and whenever I had a music video coming out in the 90s, it was this big deal. Do you know what I mean? You were Michael Jackson's got, and do you remember the time, black or white, all of that stuff? And it was it was such a big deal because these music videos were do you know what I mean? They were 6 minutes long, and Top of the Pops had to do the chart early because it's right, and the release for next week, the chart's new release is Michael Jackson's. They'd crammed in the top 40 in the first 20 minutes just so they could show a Michael Jackson video, a premiere of it at the end. And, I just remember thinking, these videos are amazing. Do you know what I mean? I love them, man.
Aye. It's difficult because there's a lot of comments coming in saying about what Jackson done. And that's fair enough. We can't look past that. Just the same, we can't look back at what happened at Celtic Boys Club. We can't not disown what went on there. But with Jackson and with Celtic, you've maybe got to separate the club from the action of an individual. But with Jackson, you've got to separate his art from what he was like as a person. Himself, I think so. Anyway,
all I'm trying to recount is my memories. Do you know what I mean? And at that point in time, I'm in the 90s when he was releasing videos. About 8-9 years old, I was. I don't know anything about any of this other stuff. Do you know what I mean? That's all I'm talking about. I'm talking about as I watched Top of the Pops at that time, what the impact was of these music videos that came out, and it was wow, that's this is a football and music show. Do you know what I mean?
It was a big deal. It was a massive deal, and no matter what he done, later on, if you're talking about the 70s and 80s, Michael Jackson, he was a massive, massive deal to everybody of a certain age growing up at that point. So it was a cultural icon. He died, and that was shown. That was shown that he was a cultural icon when he passed away. What album are you going to talk about?
So I went for something a wee bit more obscure for me, I would say, but I mean they did have a big chart hit, which they're a couple. This album sold 100,000 records. It was by the Noisettes, Wild Young Hearts. Now, they have a singer whose name I have got on the screen in front of me because I don't want to pronounce it wrong. I think it's Shingai Shonawa, but what a soulful voice this girl's got. This is their second album, and there's funk in it, there's a bit of soul, Motown vibes, and there's a bit of just sort of indie music from that sort of era. You can hear the influences, or you can tell it's from the generation it's from as well. In certain aspects of that sort of indie vibe, there was obviously the big hit, the Don't Upset the Rhythm, Go Baby, Go Baby, Go. Love that tune. Really good bass line, little funky guitars in the background. And then when they did I'll Never Forget You, I always remember when that came out. Brilliant tune. It's like a soul song. So we give it a listen today. And there's moments, that, as I say, that are indie. There's moments that are quite Motown. There's moments that are quite funky. And it's quite pop as well. It's quite easy to listen to. I always think when a band's got a right good singer, do you know what I mean? That's got she's got a really charming voice. It's a nice pitch. It's a nice tone. It makes the rest of the songs easy to listen to, particularly if a lot of them are upbeat, which they are. And the era when Celtic played Tottenham, this album had actually dropped out the top 40 and then it just re-entered it because of the single Don't Upset the Rhythm. So there you go. But yeah, I don't know if you remember the Noisettes album at all, Kevin, that came out, but popular.
I do remember it, but I was surprised there when he said it sold 100,000 copies. I cannot remember it being that popular. Like that big, because selling 100,000 records in 2009 is still a big deal.
United Kingdom gold certificate, 100,000 units.
100,000 units. That's decent. That is decent.
100%.
I remember the singles. I do remember the singles, but I wouldn't have thought they would have sold 100,000.
But it's a good feel-good album. There's wee slow moments that are a wee bit almost spooky with acoustic guitar, but the actual album is a good listen. One of those albums on a sunny day it's ideal for. Maybe not so much a winter album, but driving in a State of Mind big Jeep the day with it blaring through the speakers, it was good fun. I enjoyed it.
Getting your floaty took.
I just on such a high from that,
Paul comes in. It didn't sell as much as Urban Hymns. Subscribe to win the Verve's Platinum disc.
I was getting there with that. I knew I had that in the back pocket to advertise. He's beat us to it.
If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. You get put in a draw to win this Platinum disc to signify the Verve selling 2.1 million copies of their, for me, their third best album.
It's all framed as well. The prize is pretty cool, in fairness.
It is. It's extremely cool. It would look great behind me next to my Screamacelica thing. But unfortunately, the terms of my contract means I can't enter the draw.
I've got the same terms somehow. I never checked this one. When it turns out we're not allowed to win it, so I was a bit disappointed when I read back my contract, mate.
Aye, I know. I'm going to talk about the album that was at number 10, but I want to mention the album that was at number 8 first by La Rue. Which was a bit of synth pop and...
I know where you're going.
Of course you know where I'm going.
I do know. You're going to say something about a news reporter's daughter, aren't you? I
know, but not a news reporter.
Oh, is it not?
No. Did you ever watch
The Bill?
The Bill. June Ackland's daughter. June Ackland's daughter.
I got there. I jumped in too early, Kev. I knew when you said La Rue, I went, I know him.
I remember I've just been utterly amazed that, again, being an 80s child, you always watched The Bill. And this band fronted by June Ackland's daughter. I remember thinking I was getting wound up. I'm going, that's not June Ackland's daughter. That can't be June Ackland's daughter. That's like... and obviously, what else is... we call her June Ackland, but she's not called June Ackland. That was the name, and that was the name in the Bill. Trudy Curry, is that her right name? It's Trudy Son, I think. But everybody just knows her as June Ackland because that's what she was for years in the Bill. I'm going to go for the album that was number 10 in the charts that week, and it's by Kasabian. And it's the West Rider Pauper Lunatic Asylum. And it was the third album by Kasabian. And when we're talking about shifting units, Kasabian's previous album, Empire, had sold 800,000 copies. Mm-hmm. And I think this album sold... I can't remember. I think it was 300,000. This album ended up. It still went to number 1. And when you look at it, shows you how much music has changed. Kasabian's second album, Empire, sold 800,000 copies and went in at number 1. Right. By the time they got to their last album, Crying Out Loud, was it? Was that the name of it? I think it was. That went to number 1, selling 40,000 copies. Mm-hmm. It shows you the absolute
trends.
Nah, it shows you, but it's still classed as a number 1 album because it still went to number 1. No, this is their third album, and for me, it's their best album. I think this is the one where everything came together for them. Right off the Underdog to Fire, everything every song on this hits the mark. Every song on this is absolutely not perfect, but they do what they want to do with it, and every song makes a statement. On this one, they're electronic, it's psychedelic, there's stomping glam, there's big choruses. And I was listening to the album the day and I'm going, this is a decent album. And it's a band that I've, like, after Velociraptor, I haven't listened to their final 2 albums that they've released since then. What the album that was a pink cover? What was that one? 4815.
Aye, I had a countdown on it.
Had the pink cover, and it had the single of it. No, that was their last album. That was definitely. I had the one, but I had Bumblebee, easy, and all that. Oh, that's dreadful. I think when I heard that single, I was like, wait a minute. What is that? What he's actually doing there? But when you go back and listen to this album, this is a pinnacle, an absolute pinnacle of an album. Do you like this album yourself, Russell?
I've got a lot of good memories of it.
It's good live.
I've got a criticism of them as well at this time, because you're talking about they sold 800,000, they peaked with this album, 300,000, another number one. Like that's 3 number one albums in a row by now. And then that same month of the Celtic Tottenham game, I go and see them support Oasis at Murrayfield, and I just felt, I would like to have seen them not being a support band still, and I felt they were a wee bit guilty of pandering to Oasis, the Oasis thing a wee bit too much. You've got to stand on your own 2 feet eventually, Kev. 3 number one albums, Oasis had 2 world tours by the time they had 3 world albums under their belt. As headline act, Kasabian, I just think touring still with Oasis has been the support act. I just personal opinion, but I would have liked to have seen them just have a wee bit more clout about them and maybe, I know they held down a lot of festivals around this time. To be honest with you, I think they did around this time 14 parks in a row. I think they did 04, 05, 06. 08, 09, it was getting almost, it became a bit karaoke, that I felt with the LSF stuff. But that album, I always remember Fire, ironically being the most sang song on the way to Murrayfield to see Oasis, and this train could have came off the track, mate. I'm not joking. Everyone was jumping about, like, it's like, I'm on fire. They were just, everyone going absolutely mad to it. So it shows you, it was obviously, a huge song for that to be getting sung instead of, typically it would be Oasis songs getting sung in an Oasis gig, but I would have liked to have seen them do what like the Enemy did. The Enemy did the Rico Arena and stuff like that. I think the Cortinas did something similar. Slightly smaller stage, but still hold like 25,000 and headline your own. Do you know what I mean? I think they maybe did...
they done Leicester.
They did Leicester.
They done Leicester,
I think they did Leicester, but I think Kasabian had a big enough following, particularly in Scotland, to have done maybe Falkirk Stadium did a lot of gigs. It's good enough for Rod Stewart, could have been good enough for them,
It could have been, and they always pulled a large crowd at festivals. They always seemed to be, if you were struggling for a festival headline act, if there was no big acts available that year, I just get Kasabian because they'll give you a decent hour and a half, an hour and 45 minutes. Yeah. And I always thought they were maybe relatively cheap, because they're all for a headliner act, because they seem to be headlining in nearly every festival, one summer when they had nothing to promote, or when, especially Glasgow, Jeff Ellis for T or DF Concerts or whoever it is does the T in the Park stuff. Always seemed to, when he was struggling for a headline, he always went, "I'll just phone Kasabian. They'll come and do it, and they'll pull a certain type of crowd to it." And they were a fantastic live band. I've seen them twice, and the last time was round about this tour. I went to see them at the SEC on this tour, and it was cracking. It was really good. They were a good live band. For me, they've got a massive Primal Scream influence. If the Primal Scream had they made Exterminator or the Live in Tokyo album, then I don't think you would have got the way Kasabian ended up sounding. But after that, I've just found they've been they've never reached that height again. And now they've got to reinvent themselves, don't they, after the singer leaving, the singer being thrown out. But then people are wondering what's going to happen, because the singer was such a presence live anyway, was just the way that he's talking about the stage. He was more a cheerleader than a singer at certain times, but Serge has sung a lot of lead vocals on a lot of albums and a lot of album tracks, so for him to take over as frontman is probably not as big as leap as what people are going to suggest it could be. I don't think so. But
it's a bit weak though.
It is, probably is. But
you hear that some of his background, he's doing the backing vocals live. I don't know. I think that might end up. I know what you're saying. Tom it wasn't exactly the best vocalist in the world, but he was loud. And I just wonder if these songs I just think Serge's projection isn't great. And I think that could come back and bite them on the backside when they get back on the road.
Aye, you could be right there. And I'm surprised they're carrying on. I'm surprised that they're actually carrying on. You might see them coming back with a complete change of direction, as you say, because they need to change the vocal. They need to change the way that they write stuff, and for Serge, which is not for Tom. But when you have a look at this Underdog, what a fantastic song Underdog is. Where Did All the Love Go? It was another classic song. See, this album, it's got a theme, runs all the way through it. And I didn't realise this until I was doing some research on this album. Do you know what the theme is? Every song is written from the perspective of an inmate in the lunatic asylum.
That's what the point was it?
That's what the point was. So every song is a character story, a fictional character story who is in this lunatic asylum. And when I listen to it today with that knowledge, the lyrics make more sense.
You think so?
Aye.
Wow.
It's when you just listen to it, like some of the times the lyrics sounded a bit nonsensical, like just like when you listen to Fire, when you start thinking the lyrics of Fire, and you go, oh wait a minute, I wear snakeskin boots, blah blah blah. And you're going, wait a minute, if that's coming from the point of view of a fictional character, it makes more sense now.
Fair enough.
I would recommend anybody. I like shit like that, basically.
No, I get it.
I think that's quite decent. Anything else? Anything else?
It's only been we've not done bad.
Not done bad. Not done bad. We never got took off air for talking about Michael Jackson, which I didn't realise when I started talking about him that we probably shouldn't have went there, but there you go. Aye, well, that's us. Subscribe if you want to get a chance to win the Ver thing. I'll be back tomorrow at 6:30. No, 6:30, 12:30, and for the bulletin. So I've been Kevin Graham. He's been Russell Boyce. Be kind to each other and be kind to yourself. Hail, hail.